Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is first in a three-part video regarding debugging and just sort of the tools you have to debug in JavaScript and how to use them. So the simplest and one of the most useful debugging tools is Console.log. What does Console.log do? It literally prints to the console. So it'll be like console.log. Hello. Okay, save. Let me just get this out of the way. And if I run this, node testing, and see it prints hello. Now this becomes useful in trying to figure out what goes wrong when you do something. So let's see here. Let's say I make a function. Const add nums equals num1, num2. Okay, num1, num2. And basically what this function does is just return the sum of the two numbers. So return num1 plus num2. That's all this function does. So if I were to do this, add nums 2 and 2, it should give me back 4. See what happens when I run the code. Nothing. Now why? Because while the function returned a value, I did nothing with it, which is fine. A lot of times my functions are returning values that I never see. And that's fine because I'm sending them somewhere else. I'm storing them in a variable and doing other stuff with it. But what if I want to make sure that it gives me the right information? So for example, so I might want to test that this function actually gives me what I expect before I start using it in a bigger way. So what I'll do is I'll console.log. So I'll wrap that in parentheses and console.log the function, so that way I can see what value it returns. Okay, let me just take that semicolon out of there. Okay, save. And so now this function will add num1, num2, so it'll add 2 plus 2, return 4. That gets sent to console.log and returns 4. Nice. Okay, now a common mistake is someone will do something like this. Okay, they'll console.log num1 plus num2, which will show 4 on the screen, but you never actually got back 4. So how do I know that my function is actually giving me back the number 4? Well, now console logging the function itself will make that very clear. Because now if I console log it, I get this 4 here. That's because the console log inside the function, but the console log of the function says undefined, because nowhere did this function return me or give me back any kind of value. Okay, so sometimes console logging the result of the function by itself can be help make what's going on more clear. Okay. Okay. And now I can do cool stuff like this. I can be like, hey, you know, I want to, that's like too much. I want to have a variable called 8. Because what I'm going to do is that this is going to equal the sum of add nums to 2 plus the same function again. Okay, so technically this function runs. This is going to be basically equivalent to 4 because 2 plus 2 is 4. And this is the equivalent of 4 because 2 plus 2 is 4. So then it does 4 plus 4, which is 8, and stores 8 in that variable. I don't really care about whether the two functions did the right thing because I know the function works. I've already tested the function. It gave me back 4, which was what it was supposed to do. So now I really want to make sure that they get added right. So I'll console log 8. Okay, and see I get 8. Okay, so you start seeing, you know, and you take out your console logs after you use them. Like, don't leave them there, because then you end up having too many console logs and it's hard to follow what's going on in your console. Okay, other good uses of console logs is just basically console logging data that you're not sure of what it is. So I'm trying to think of another really good example. Let's say here in this function, actually what we do is first we do const sum. So first we add the two numbers. And then const divide, or div, we'll say. is num is sum divided by num1, just some sort of weird multiple steps, and then we return the div value. Okay, what I may want to do is go back and put a console log of each step to make sure that each step did what I expected it to do. So I expect that, let's say, we'll do an example in a second, console.log div. So that way I can just make sure that this function is doing what I think it's doing, not just all together, but each step of the way. Because oftentimes, what you think where something went wrong, it really something went wrong like a couple steps behind. Okay, and that's why you generally always want to test each piece of your code. So when you write a function, test the function before you move on with your code. Run a couple dummy runs of the function, make sure that it's outputting what you expect it to output before you move on. It's going to be a lot easier to debug if you make sure that each piece as you build it is solid, instead of waiting until you've done everything and then trying to figure out which piece is broken. So save. Okay, let's take a look what happened here. It says 8 is not defined. That's because I wrote the word 8 here, and 8 variables doesn't exist anymore. So let's do this. Add nums to 2. So if this works right, let's first think through what it should do. So if I'm putting in 2 and 2, so first it's going to add 2 and 2, so this should be 4. So this console log should show 4. And then div equals sum divided by num1, so this should be 4 divided by 2, which should equal 2, so div should be 2. Okay, and then it should return 2. So I should end up having a 4, 2, 2 on my screen. Again, think through what you're going to get first, because it's hard to know if the console logs are telling you what's wrong if you don't kind of have an idea of what should be coming out. So take a moment and read the code yourself and test the code in your head, then run the code to see if it matches. Save. Okay, 4, 2, 2. Okay, because again, num1 plus num2, 2 plus 2 equals 4. 4 divided by 2 equals 2. We console log div, but then we return div, and the return of div gets console logged, so we see 2 again. Yeah. Okay, and sometimes you may want to just do an expression. You may just want to see something like, you want to test it by saying, let me just think of a different function. Well, I mean, that's pretty much what to do with basic console log. Again, the idea is, take each piece of your code step by step, test the result if there's a return value. So if there's supposed to be data coming back from the function, it should not be returning undefined. If it's returning undefined, it's because your function is not returning a value. So then the question is, do you want it to return a value or not return a value? Okay. And again, don't just console log the end result. Put console logs in the function so that way you can see what's going on each step of the way. And sometimes you get so many console logs, it's hard to follow. So sometimes you may want to put like a little label. So I'll put something like sum. Okay, comma, and then here I'll put div, so I know I'm console logging the div variable. So that way, this console log doesn't get confused with the last console log. Okay, save, and then we'll say here, the end result, or return value. And we'll just say add nums to 2. Save. And then when I run the console log, and see that's a much clearer as to what each log belongs to and where it came from. So putting in little labels like that is also very helpful. That's it for like console log. There's a bunch of other features within console that we'll cover in the next video, but that is basically how they use console log for effective debugging. It's just basically, again, testing your hypothesis, assessing. A lot of it has to come down to you understanding the code, so that way you can come up with the right tests. Okay, because you're looking for mistakes you made. So you're going to sit there and say, does this do what I think it does? Does this do what I think it does? And do it piece by piece. Don't try to test large blocks of code with one console log, because there's so many other places it could have gone wrong. So I'll see you guys in the next video.